At long last I've managed to get the walk-through of the woods sorted out. So I'm going to follow the track that we went with Henry last time, about 9 months, a year maybe ago, and see what the difference is at Grove Farm. So follow me. The ruin hasn't changed at all, other than I've been scraping up all topsoil, which I guess used to be escaped chicken poo. This is slowly collecting the remainder of the asbestos and little bits of metal that are lying around still. I've uncovered some, I'm not sure what this was, some remnants of some old glass house or something that perhaps ran down to the ruin. It was all totally hidden under the mud. You can see where the wall used to come to. So this was a much narrower door. Field's looking a lot less weedy. We've had it sprayed recently. Didn't quite get everywhere because it was a bit rough underfoot. But we've been tidying up. Tied it up around the cedar tree over there. And we've been in the process of extracting some of the stone that's been lying around in the field. The aim being to get it sort of back to an acceptable standard as a field for machinery to come and help tidy up. So for example, we've just got rid of this huge pile of rubble that had, not sure whether it was a little shed there or it had just been dumped there. Some of it had come out of that hole, which I'll get filled up at some point. It's rather nice today. Been waiting, it seems to have been raining for a long time. We've actually had to stop working in the woods about nearly a month ago because it's been just so wet. There's been plenty else to do though. Here's the green gauge tree. I've had a not a complete prune but quite a big prune on that. There's still a bit of work to do on it. Thinned it out so that we can get green gauges that we can reach. You can probably also see, stop moving, that we did a substantial amount of work on the other side of the wall, which has enabled us to actually see almost all of the top of the wall. It was almost entirely covered before. It's a very nice day. At long last the sun's come out. Got loads of bird boxes up you might spot as we wander along. Put up nearly 30. I think 1 or 2 of them have got nests in already, but we put them up a little late, so probably won't see anything till next year with those. We've extracted quite a bit of wood out of the woods. There was so much of it. We've left quite a lot as well, which you'll see as we go through. Still lots of ongoing woodland work to do. This is the area that was, well, I never filmed it when it was in its very early stage, but it was absolutely completely full of cherry laurel, this section. You couldn't even push your way through here when we first moved here. And now, if you pan round, you can see the river. It's quite low at the moment. I've taken the fencing down. I want to get that sorted out this year or perhaps early next year. You might be wondering why there isn't one rhododendron left. This is the first thing we see. This is a great big red, I'm not sure the actual type, it's not the rhododendron Ponticum, it's a big red one. It's such a nice tree. I thought I'd save it. It's really the only major tree of rhododendron that we had. So we had some that were almost as big as that, but as sort of weeds. But I've saved that one and a little one just here because they're interesting reminders of the fact that this was actually a bit of a pleasure garden and this was the entrance to it. So it seemed a bit inappropriate to hack every single one of them out. So those are the 2 I'm saving. If you look around, there's still the odd little bit of rhododendron, but very little. Bear in mind there was almost 100% cover. So for example, there's some bits just down here, and I'll spray those down at some point when they've got enough leaves on them to kill them off properly. The other danger, of course, is if I killed absolutely everything off en masse on the bank, it might collapse, as several people pointed out. But this is the sort of wrought and cast iron gateway through. You couldn't get through this almost when we were first here because the briars that grew in from the side were literally lying right over the railings. You couldn't see any of them. But now look at it. It's quite a sort of dramatic sort of plunge down there. You can't quite tell how far it is, but it's maybe 40-foot drop straight over the edge there down to the sort of banking at the level. Still a bit of burning to do down there. It's just been so wet we couldn't really burn very much. Check out the woodland. Look how open it's become. Stuff growing already, leaping up from where the rhododendron was. Some lovely sort of woodland flowers, particularly on this bit because it's quite damp. Got to sort that out. Yet another thing to sort out. What I've realised is that you never actually finish managing woodland. It's just an ongoing process. So that's why I've decided to say that's it for the moment. There'll be some more thinning to do at some point, but look at the views that have opened up. You couldn't see the river at all. Incredible to think that for so long this great view up and down the river. And I'll show you where you can watch sort of woodland wildlife whizzing along, and haven't seen any fish from up here yet, but I've seen, I think it was a mink, and I've seen kingfishers and lots of other different sorts of birds and heron. And of course the locals, because you can now see across the other side, which you couldn't do before. Not that there are many locals wandering around usually. So we'll carry along the track. I'll say the fencing's all the way here, but I will replace some. It's a little bit concerning, and I can't bring the kids down very often yet, unless they're under close control. I'll just spin round. Yes, much. It's great views have opened up. But it's funny to think this was all entirely obscured. Couldn't see any of this. Give you an idea how much work we've done between all the various people that have helped. I kept a relatively accurate record of the amount of hours. We did nearly 1,000 hours work spread over 3.5 months in clearing the rhododendron individually, cutting it and herbiciding it, and then more recently we've been doing quite a lot of thinning. So I've taken out a lot of the sycamore trees. There's still a few left. There's still actually a couple of cherry laurel left, but we're almost on top of it, and I'm waiting to see what happens this spring to get an idea of what else to take out, which won't be very much. But we've left quite a lot of wood. Some of these piles will go as firewood, but quite a lot of them are being left either as piles or as trunks just lying on the ground, just to allow woodland sort of wildlife to take over. So there's some ash that I've chopped down there that just stayed probably just like that. There's also some sort of what's known as standing deadwood. So that's trees that have died or been blown over that we're just going to leave because they're good. They're good for the wildlife as well. Some bird boxes up, just getting past. You get much more of a sense of the ride or walkway through the woods now. If you look, that goes off towards the castle, and panning round slowly past some nice poles which I'm going to use for something. Haven't thought what yet. Camps maybe, and then back up. There's a couple of trees there on the line. When the tractor can get in here when it's dried out, we're going to take those out so that you get the real feel of the road going all the way up through, or the track going all the way up through. So I'll carry on with the walk. Hopefully the whole forest floor, or the whole woodland floor, will end up a bit more like this as the sunshine gets into it and the seeds get spread over this year and the next few years. It can take 3 or 4 years at least for woodlands to recover after rhododendrons, as much as 7 I've heard, so it's going to be an ongoing project. But I think you can already tell that it's worth all the effort. Right, this is the point where the water runs from the fields above across. I might even divert that and make a small pond somewhere, because there's quite a constant supply of water. I haven't decided quite where yet, but it's looking a lot better. It's really appreciating the fact we've opened it all up. Just looking back up the hill. Here's a collection of some of the rubbish that we pulled out of the woods and probably mainly the river. That's just a small amount of what's not been disposed of already. Now, on the last walk through, we sort of dropped down the line of the waterway and follow roughly the same line, but you'll get a much greater sense of the openness of it all now. You have to sort of fight under trees and trip over bits of old pipe and stuff. There's some rhododendron left which we're going to burn, for example this bit. We would have burnt it this year, but we're a bit concerned there might be creatures nesting and living in it now that the springs have taken off. So that will get burnt in the autumn, or late autumn I suspect. Heading down towards the ice house, which is where we went with Henry last time. Much brighter. The big tall plants that grow up like sort of giant umbrellas are just starting. You might be able to see that's butterbur I've discovered. And these things here can grow up. I've actually seen them almost as tall as me, if not slightly taller. Right, here was the section that I showed some. It's one of the earlier parts that we cleared. It's a sort of mound. It's completely hidden before the ice house. Still got a bit of thinning to do. I've got to take out a couple of the trees that are leaning on it, but I'm just waiting till it's dried out enough to get in. But it's only really a day or two's work left on them, so they've got to go. More bird boxes. It's rather funny putting up nearly 30 bird boxes. It just seemed a little bit excessive, but they're certainly well spread out. And then back down to the river where I came with Henry before. We've even been in the river, clearing out some of the stuff that had fallen in. I think we stopped about here and went up the bank in the last bit of video, but I'll just let you see it for a moment. Did quite a lot of work on this. I'm going to head this way around, which we didn't go before, but to give an idea of what else this place looks like. There's some great huge log blockages here, which you got rid of most of. There's still a bit of rubbish in the river, which I'll try and get rid of again when the water level's gone down again, and when it's warmed up, because it's pretty chilly at the moment, even still in May. So this is heading back down the river, and I'll sort of parallel with the ice house, which is just over there. Just take you on an all-terrain trip around the edge of Grove Farm, just in case you're unable to get here. One of the things I'm planning to do this next year is to get some deer fencing up. We'll just see a bit of, I don't know if you can see it there, a quick example of why the deer fencing is needed even right down here, is the deer can cross the river when it gets reasonably low, and until I can get some fencing up we run the risk of any new tree planting being eaten. Now, I've got my own beach, look. Right, so just follow this round. I've still got a bit of clearing here to do. I think this little log jam here has got about 7 car tyres in it from what I remember. I'll get all those out. It's actually quite nice to see the water looking really clear. I saw some fish jumping yesterday, so it would be nice to see them jumping without the rubbish, which is endlessly being washed along. This is quite a nice spot. We've done a lot of work down here. Haven't quite got rid of this tree on the other side yet, but that will go. Some massive trunks that have been washed in, which is good for the river. Big trunks, but the trouble is they tend to cause big blockages, which then backfill with human rubbish. That's why I try and keep it reasonably open. And this is perhaps the only place you can easily stand to get a sense of the amount of work that we did, particularly with Sam and my dad, on clearing the rhododendron on the banks, looking down the river. It was basically rhododendron from sort of about here on the bank all the way down for maybe, I don't know, must be 100, 150 metres, all of it on a really steep slope, and it all had to come out using abseiling down it, using a chainsaw, 2 ropes obviously, and lots and lots of hauling up. Unfortunately, because the river was quite low earlier in the year, we got permission to drag a lot of it across to the other side of the river and burn it on the river bank. So we're actually, just to orientate us, we're looking back towards the walled garden, or the walled field is up over there. But this section, we can see the river had rhododendron hanging over the cliff all the way down, and there was a huge great oak tree here had collapsed in quite recently, and that had blocked up, and you can see how it's even worn a big section of the beach part away. And the issue with that is, even in after a month or so, it had accumulated a huge jam of rubbish and all sorts of stuff. But now you get this sort of view right down the river. I'd perhaps like to even take out the smaller ash tree that's lying there, which I sort of made for a good fun bridge to walk across, but I'll take that out as well, and then at some point I'd like to bob down this on a raft, a small one, because it's not that deep. It's also be a good little fishing spot, I think, for when I get old and take up fishing. Right, heading back. It's crazy to think this bit sometimes goes underwater. I haven't seen it this year, but it could still happen. So heading back, that's the ice house straight ahead, just to orientate yourself. I'll head back up the track. Certainly no shortage of firewood for the next decade. There's still a few more trees to come out down here, but just to get you a feel of the thinning, it's lots of silver birch, which are actually got quite big. They must be 15 metres at least, some of them. And this section over here has got a lot of birch. I've left a few sycamore in, but I've ringed a couple of them to kill them off, to allow for some standing deadwood. In fact, there's an example of some just here that's done it itself. It gives a good habitats for creatures to live in. Right, I've brought you over to this bit, which is the field below the sort of entrance way. You can fight my way over some of the old fencing, which will all have to come out. I'd like to get all this fenced up again. Some of the fencing removed permanently to open the woodland up. Right, now you probably won't recognise this bit if you've been before, because from about here onwards was again really thick rhododendron. You could hardly see much of this at all, the view of the river, and you certainly couldn't see any of these bigger trees. Rhododendron went from about, well, you can see where it was because the grass hasn't grown yet. It grew from the banks right the way down, not quite into the river, but almost into the river. It's quite a steep slope, and there's that sort of cliff edge I just showed you just underneath. But you couldn't see any of these trees, and some of them are quite spectacular. Big old, well, that's a sycamore just there, but big old oaks, great big dead sections and woodpecker holes, and they're quite substantial trees. Couldn't see any of it, which is a bit of a shame. It's been quite difficult clearing this. There's still a few stumps that need taken out. But there's even like some old, there's a yew tree there. Some great examples of some sort of veteran trees, I think they are. Still a few sycamores which I could probably chop out at some point, but I don't want to run the risk of the banks collapsing, so it's a balance to be found. There's a few little bits that need sprayed off, but other strange views, well not strange, but new views have appeared. Got a view up now, up the valley, up to the Dalhousie Bridge. And Grove Farm actually includes this section down here. It carries on all the way up. So we've got a little tiny bit to sort of just check over there, but pretty much everything's been either cut down or sprayed off. A tiny bit of thinning, maybe. Once I've got a better feel for what needs left, what needs left behind and what needs to be removed. Now this bit, if you've been to Grove Farm, it wasn't filmed before, is where the coppice area of trees were, but actually you could only get to about here. This was entirely blocked with rhododendron and was actually the continuation of the walk down to the castle. So that's all been opened up. Vast quantities of rubbish came out of here that had been thrown over the wall by fly tippers over the years, which is a shame because it's a lovely little spot. And I'm pretty sure I've seen otter footprints down by the river, down in the little beach areas. Too big to be anything else, and not fox prints. But and that's really the end of the walk through. Little bits of litter to go. Yet more bits of rhododendron firewood, and that isn't quite the end of the farm. It's the end of where we've been clearing rhododendron. I did carry on in my enthusiasm, or maybe I just couldn't stop, and we cleared loads of rubbish from under the road bridge, which had blown off the road over the decades. There must have been a van full of rubbish, quite a substantial amount. And there's still some here. I got the worst of it done, and I've left this bit sort of overgrown to discourage people walking through from the castle at the moment. And there you go, that's the end of Grove Farm. Finishes technically at the bridge, just where that car is, just there. And that's Dalhousie Castle right next to us. And I think that's probably as good a place as any to finish it off before I start tidying that up. I don't think I live long enough to get that far. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed the walkthrough of this part of Grove Farm. And sorry it took so long to get it all uploaded to see.